Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another episode of ASAP, your Afrikan Social Activism Playbook. I am one of your hosts, T. Jamal, joined as always by my lovely sister, Michelee. Good morning, Mish. How are you doing today?
I'm good right now. I had a little not so good start this morning, but I'm more than halfway through my day now. And I've been just taking it easy, so I'm feeling much better now. Just
Yeah,
looking
it's
forward
good
to
to make sure that you're getting your rest. I had to get a couple of moments of rest this morning for myself. Um, life does what it does. It lifes
right,
you, and we all have to go through it, which is why we are so adamant about not only just doing these check-ins every time we do this show, but also just kind of promoting unity,
right,
promoting togetherness. We need one another, and it's not shameful to lean upon people that you actually trust. That's how we move forward. That's how culture started, because people found people that they had common beliefs with. They shared the same sort of like mission and standards,
hmm,
and they would create civilizations and cultures around just those major mandates and standards for their community and where they wanted things to go and how they wanted their family lives to be and how they wanted to kind of protect and look out for one another. So we definitely have to continue that trend,
right,
because right now, with the way things are in the world, blase blah, it just seems like every man for himself. And that doesn't really work in the long term,
right.
because
You know,
just
I
like
I,
we
I think
talked about
about
yesterday.
yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we sort of adopted from you know people who we've been up under, in this system that
The
wasn't,
oppressors.
yeah,
Mhm.
it wasn't natural to us. We just you take on different habits and stuff, to where it's like every man for himself, every woman for
Right.
herself, and we not checking in like family should. So yeah, I really appreciate that, and I'm getting more used to responding honestly, because a lot of times, it's just like, hey, how you doing? I'm good, I'm fine, and it's like, did I even give it any thought? Am I really fine? Am I really okay? And that's okay, as we're not like dumping a bunch of stuff on people like without
Right.
notice, but still, you are able to, if that's welcome. And I think too often we're not even giving a lot of thought when we are asking somebody, like, are you asking genuinely how they're doing? How would you, would you allow them to kind of unload, because we need that therapy
Yeah, I was just about to say
sometimes.
that when you talk about you answering honestly, it also goes on to the point of when you're asking the question, how are you doing? Are you really ready and prepared for if they're not doing okay? Are you ready for
Exactly.
them to say no? Right?
Exactly.
And are you ready to just lend an ear? Sometimes everybody isn't looking for advice. They just need to get things off their chest. And like you said, you're not just randomly doing it to any and everyone. That's why you
Right.
have a circle.
Hmm.
I remember when phone companies used to charge minutes based on
Hmm.
your phone plan. T-Mobile had this Fave 5 that you could get, and you could
Right.
speak limited only to 5 people. So even if all you have are 5 people that you actually talk to
Hmm.
seriously, be open and honest with at least those people. I have
Right.
about 5 probably. You know, I've always had at least 3, and it was just my
Right.
parents and my brother. Everybody else got mask on teeth. But
Yeah.
I've learned to start being a little bit open, because the more you hold things in, the more is gonna come out volatile when it does come out, and it is going to come out.
Yeah,
So it's
that's for
better,
certain.
exactly, it's better that you control when and how it comes out than it, bursting out like a volcano erupting. So
Right.
I think that even though, this is ASAP, this is the African Social Activism Playbook, this check-in, like we said from the beginning of the show, is African. This starting off conversations with checking in on one another is very important before you just jump into having conversations.
Right.
And it's even one of the plays in the playbook. If you can't self-care, if you're not doing self-care, there's no way you can be an effective activist. There's no way you can be an effective anything in life, because you're going to deteriorate as you just keep pushing. So
Absolutely.
just that little quick message before we jump into things, but we're about to jump into our straight truth no chaser. And like we said, it's going to be the same all week. We won. What now?
Right.
Right? So we spoke about, and I wanted to talk a little bit about runoff elections. Sometimes, it's looked upon as, all right, we made it to a runoff. So that means we had enough votes where it was too close to call on election day, or even in the few days post election day. So they do a runoff a couple of months later. The candidates go back to work campaigning again. And the hope is that they can get the same people to come out and vote again. What happens, though, is that people stop paying very close attention when it's runoff season.
Right.
And I want to encourage people, especially during these times. We talked about what the importance of having a flexible and just reasonable Congress behind a president would do for our ability to get the policies changed that we want.
Mm-hmm.
We have seats in Congress that are up for grabs in key states, Georgia being one of them, and some other key states. So please, if you live in one of those states that has a runoff on really any level, make sure that we show up in the same amount of numbers, with the same passion, with the same fervor to vote, to make sure that we can make sure that the candidates that we elect, we can actually hold accountable.
Right.
The thing is, go ahead.
Go ahead. I'd say even with more aggression, more fervor, because
Exactly.
when you
Yes.
like realize it, remember that map, like that map, the picture of that map is burned into my brain now, right? It was like, that was a reality check for a lot of people. Like we talked about yesterday, we know what America is. We know who lives there, the mentalities that live there, that dwell there. But we can't be foolish enough to think that this one would easily come to us when they already felt that they were losing everything. They're going to do all they can. You better believe those folks in the hills, they're about to come out and make sure that they at least get to hold on to something. So we have to go at it even harder. Like, it's not enough to be like, oh, they got it. The people who set out the first time, we can't afford for another time for you to sit out and just think like, oh, they got it. This is a time to really step up. Even if you don't fully believe in something, you don't fully understand it. Trust the other Black people that you are in community with. When we say, we know what we're talking about right now, right? We need control of this part, because without it, it doesn't matter who's president. That's what happened with Obama. And Mitch McConnell got up there and people thought he was lying, right? When people, they didn't really take it seriously. He said he was blocking everything that Obama was going to put up there, and he surely did. So it does not work. I don't care who you are. You can have a black as unapologetically Black. You can have Umar Johnson in the presidency. And if he don't have a Democratic, well, at this point, like between the two parties that we're dealing with, dealing with a Republican led Congress, you're not going to get anything passed. So I don't care who you think you're dealing with. Like, trust us when we say, please just go out, just lay your brick. That's been my thing. We are trying to build something. You have a brick in your hand. We need it. You ain't gonna do nothing with it. It don't cost you nothing. Just go up there and lay your brick. That's all we ask. Okay? Just trust. Trust the people that you're in community with.
And just like we always say with tools can be used for their proper purpose, which is usually to help construct something, or they can be used to destroy. So let's just take that analogy of a brick. Bricks can be laid to build a building. Bricks can also be thrown into somebody's window and break in. And when you don't vote, you're essentially throwing your brick into the window of your own house because you aren't helping everyone else build. You're literally throwing bricks at what we're building as we're laying bricks. So you think you are abstaining from something when you are actively destroying something. Even inactivity is activity. Like, you're showing something. Apathy is doing something. So make sure that what we do means something for us.
And that's it's just you bringing up also is that a tool is used to build or destroy. Like, if you're talking about, if you're a person who feels like, well, this whole system just needs to be torn down, you're also not doing anything to help tear it down, to get anybody closer to, to that point, to be able to break anything down. If you're not, using your voice, like if you're not using that tool, you're also not tearing it down. You're accepting it. That's what you're doing. Essentially, you're accepting it. You're saying like, oh, well, it's nothing we can do about it. Nothing I can do about it. And so you're leaving it there. That means that you're okay with it, right? Like, so just think about that. I think, our actions they have to make sense right now.
Exactly. Our actions have to make sense. We have to be logical. We have to be sensible. And just like we spoke about yesterday, we have a lot of people feeling like they're, doing something positive by abstaining from voting. And it just doesn't make logical sense because you're still here. If you're not actively planning an armed revolution, or if you're not actively just leaving the entire situation alone, meaning leaving the country, then you can't really complain when things aren't going the way that you want them to, because the thing that we do have control over, you're not doing. And like we keep saying, it's more than a vote. It's more than just the vote. Your constituency goes beyond just casting the ballot. You cast the ballot and then you hold accountable. You cast the ballot, then you hold accountable. Like,
the job is not done with one step.
Exactly. Phone calling. The reason that we are really concerned about Congress, both the House and the Senate, is because once we know who's there, then we can start holding them accountable. Once we hear their campaign promises, all you have to do is throw the campaign promises, use their campaign for your advantage to get your agenda. Oh, they said they were going to do this. Take notes about what they said, and let's take 3 points at a time. Let's call them state by state, district by district, and hold them accountable, hold their feet to the fire. And we can do this with Republican candidates as well, Republican elected officials as well, independent elected officials as well. Take the campaign issues that, they promise people and say, we demand that this actually be done. And then when either they're going to budge and do it, because a real politician, no matter what party, will respond to their constituency. That's one of the reasons we had to get Trump out of here, because he wasn't a politician. He was just doing whatever.
Right. And there was no rules to even go by. Like when
Exactly.
you know, somebody is just rebelling against the whole system. That's the crazy thing about it though, is that a lot of people, even those who want to justify their support or just like you know, not complete dissatisfaction with him, was just because he's not a usual politician. He's not the regular politician. And so, you know, they trusted him to not just give people to run around and do all the politician things, but you are safer dealing with somebody who has to play by the rules, right? Like if you're making up your rules as you go, how do you even counter that? Like just think about it as playing a game. When you're playing a game, and how are you going to win? What is the point of playing this game? Like you said, you are here. I physically took myself out of that situation because I already know I wasn't trying to deal with it, you know, but still, you know, my hand's still in it. You know, my family right there. But that's the main question that I ask people is like, well, why are you even there? If your attitude towards the whole situation is, well, I won't do anything, is no point because they are how they are, it is how it is, then what are you saying? That you're just there, you're just willingly there on a plantation that where you not trying to, you don't care who the master is, who the like how they the punishment, the rules of punishment and all kind of stuff. You don't care to contribute anything to it when you can. Like I don't get it. I don't get why you're choosing to be there. But
it's a lot of
different stuff.
It's a lot of misinformation, and people are protesting in their way, the way they feel like they are, you know, taking control over their power. But there are other ways to do it, and it's because we don't know how the system works that we have a lot that we can do that we just aren't doing.
Absolutely.
And so we're going to continue to encourage people to do that. And like we said before, about 2 months ago, I am already calling people. I've already got certain people that have agreed to start this letter writing and calling your Congress person. And we're gonna start as soon as the inauguration begins, as soon as the new faction takes office, then we're gonna start. Because right now it's sitting duck season. It's just a bunch of people still sitting in offices where they are kind of packing up. So they're not going to do anything right now. So we're going to, in January, probably the week before inauguration, start to make plans on how we're going to call state by state, who we're going to, you know, put pressure on, and what the agenda is going to be based on what's going on in that state, in those districts, talking to the people from there and supporting. So we're doing that, and I'm going to contact 30 people myself that I know and ask them to contact 5 other people. This is a play. I'm drawing up a play right now on my own.
Tangible.
We're going to do.
Tangible things. We talked about that yesterday on the show, is like, you know, because a lot of times we feel we don't know what to do. I don't think that, you know, we can't just categorize everybody, you know, the same as like wanting to be inactive or, you know, that people just don't care. But a lot of times, a lot of us don't know what to do. We already talked about the lack of political education. We don't know how reachable, how touchable these people are who are elected to these higher offices. They are right there in the cities, right? You know, their offices are right there. They have phone numbers, websites, emails. All you have to do a lot of times, you know, like to put pressure on people, to let them know that you're dissatisfied. At the very least, just let them know that you're dissatisfied. You can just voice that. I think a lot of people are kind of intimidated by that because they're like, well, what if I get through? What am I going to say? How do I write this email? People have like formatted, you know, emails or phone calls, just prompts, things that you can say or email to them. It's not that hard. And I think, you know, that's something actually I'm more encouraged to do that, like to even if I have to just find in different cities, different states, whatever, just find these different ways that people are organizing and have already put out the information for people to, just follow along. If a lot of times the call to action is just the call. If their phone is ringing off the hook all day, every day, that is a message to them. They only need a few people to voice their concern. And when you got 500 people ringing your phone all day, right? Like that's sending them a message. So you don't even have to go up there and have a speech prepared or anything. All you have to do is just show up. The call to action can be so simple.
And what just popped in my mind, not only can we do the phone calls ringing it off the hook, we can do actual old school with a postage stamp written letters. We can fill up their email inbox with email, but also mostly everybody is on Facebook and Twitter.
Right. Call them out.
Crawl their DMs with all of the messages in the agenda. Also, mention them, blow their mentions up. I'm talking about we're gonna hit them at every angle. We're gonna trend them if we get. And for those who do respond positively, we will, we'll blow them up on social media saying how they responded. For those who don't respond positively, we're gonna blow them up on social media saying that we did this and they have not responded. They promised this in their campaign. They have not responded. We can hold them accountable, and we have so much more of a powerful voice. Like we said, social media is a tool. I hear so many people talk negatively about social media because they're so used to people taking the brick and throwing it in a window instead of building a house.
Right.
Like we can use social media to our advantage. And not to cancel anybody, not cancel culture, counsel. So let's talk them through. This is what we want. We're giving them first an opportunity to prove themselves, to be adequate, to be reasonable, to be a good representative. And if they show themselves to not be, then we will take punitive actions against them.
Right. So, and we are able to. That's the most important takeaway right here. It's just realizing again, because a lot of us didn't know at all, but a lot of us are relearning, finally understanding that we're supposed to be the puppeteers. We're not the puppets. They are the representatives, literally, that's in their title. They're representatives. Representing who? Think about that. We got to think about this stuff. Who are they representing? Oh, they represent me? Oh, I'm the boss. I'm hiring them. That means I have firing power. And so even if you're dissatisfied with them and you're saying, well, I'm not going to vote for them. If you're dissatisfied with that person, an action would be to vote for the person running against them. That is the action that you're taking. So you're still using that tool. You're not going to say, well, this tool is not useful because I don't like what's going on. No, do something about it. If you're dissatisfied, then use the same tool to take action.
Or, like you just said, vote for the person who's running against them, or put yourself in a position to run yourself, which brings us to our highlight reel. And this story came across my page, my feed on LinkedIn this morning, and I just happened to be scrolling through, and I was like, okay, we definitely have to talk about this. So Lucy McBath is, can you add the photo to the screen?
Oh yeah.
Because I want people to see who and what we're talking about. Perfect. Thank you. So Lucy McBath is the mother of Jordan Davis. And a lot of you will probably remember the case of Jordan Davis from back in 2012 when the teenager was shot and killed at a gas station in Florida. And because the music was too loud in the car, and the person, whoever it was, I think it was somebody else in a car, that just decided, I'm gonna take out a gun and shoot these people, and did not get convicted because of Florida's crazy stand your ground law. So Miss McBath lost her son and didn't just, hide away from the world and crawl into the fetal position. What she did was she joined a lot of, groups that were about gun control, a lot of groups with mothers who had lost children to gun violence. And she put herself in position to be an activist first, and then she ran for political office. And she just got reelected in this past election that we had a week ago. And she won Georgia's 6th congressional district, which is like the northern part of Metro Atlanta, the Alpharetta, Marietta area, which is very important if you know anything about Atlanta, because those areas are not traditionally Black. And to have a Black representative with this type of experience, with that type of intention of looking out for gun control, looking out for the lives of, Black youth being taken unjustly, whether by police or otherwise. It's very important for us to have someone like that. I just wanted to highlight her, somebody who is doing something at present, especially after going through something as traumatic as she had to go through with losing her son in that way. When you saw this, what were your thoughts?
When I saw the original the case, or what she just won?
Both.
I mean, well, of course, it was devastating just hearing about the case, especially for something so ridiculous. I mean, it wouldn't matter what it was, right? But 2012 was brutal, right? That was Trayvon Martin, and just so it seemed like it was just back to back to back. And of course it was very upsetting, and these are teenagers at that. And I mean, I'm grateful for, to their mothers, the mothers of these people that have been killed unjustly. But I feel terrible that they even have to stand up, even through suffering, through their pain. But, it is inspiring to see that they are, encouraged to do that, to help other families, to help other people, you know what I mean? Because we are all affected by it, even though they were more personally affected by these situations, like they had to lose their children. Trayvon Martin's mother, Sabrina Fulton, also, she ran for public office as well, following the death of her son. And I mean, but yeah, I think that is great. I'll just say I'm proud of them for standing up and just showing that determination to get something done about it. Because a lot of times, like we were talking about earlier, when we see situations that it just seems like, well, it is how it is. This is just how it's supposed to be, how it's going to be. We can't really do anything about it. It's important to see, even especially those people who are personally affected by these things, by these situations, that they are doing, you know what I mean, an extraordinary amount of work, to not, they can't make up for it, but you know what I mean, like to do something about the situation. Because how are we being proactive? We can't just march in the streets all day. We can't just be mad and huff and puff. You want action. You have to fight the people who created these, laws and enforcing them and stuff like that. So we talked about before, like several weeks ago, about how a lot of laws and things get passed, and like what are things that we can do? How can we, formulate our own policies and all kind of stuff. I was looking at how, like, you remember we talked about ALEC, the group, the American Legislative exchange council or something like that. And this is the group, the Koch brothers, the Koch brothers, they own Walmart and all that stuff, right? But they, you know what I mean? Like, these are people with a lot of money, with a lot of power and influence, and they have people who are creating these laws, they're getting them passed, they're feeding them to these people, you know, in higher offices and getting them passed. Now, they are using the system. They're not just thinking up this stuff. They're actually using the system, the same system that we have access to. They're using the system to get things passed that they want passed. It's like, why can't we think to do the same? You know what I mean? Like, on a larger scale. Of course, there are a lot of us who are thinking of that. We do know that. But I think it's something important for a lot more of us to understand, is that there is something to be done about it, because the people will always be throwing stuff at us. We know that much. We know that when you're an enemy of the state already, things are not going to be in your favor. So we should already know. It's not even a thing to even have to mention, is that the system is against us. We already know that. So how you going to defend yourself? Don't walk into the ring with your gloves down.
Yeah, and I just want to, just commend, like you said, these mothers, these parents of these people who have been killed, and even before she passed away, the daughter of Erica Garner,
right?
She started, having a large voice in activism as well, and it's just commendable. These are what we're talking about when we say champion. This is what we're talking about right here. And, all of our champions didn't die a long time ago. We have champions still doing work today, which is why I wanted to make sure that we highlighted some current people. And this just happened serendipitously, because it just was on my timeline.
Right.
I wasn't even following this story that closely, especially not from 2012. So many of these cases happened that we just, sometimes you just have to exit some of it from your brain, or else you'll just be holding on to that weight forever. So I'm glad that this one popped back up with this, this positive spin though. So, I want to make sure that everybody knows who Lucy McBath is. And then also another key element to her story, and an important part of it that we didn't get a chance to really talk about yet, is that her seat is, moving toward flipping Georgia blue again in Congress. So having that seat being held by her is also working toward what we were talking about earlier, in making it that much more amenable to our positions, to what it is that we're fighting for. And we already know that she is focused on the police brutality, or just the injustices angle. So we can actually lean on her to make sure that we hold her accountable, and to get certain policies changed. Georgia, we need policy changes. We need these things. So when we put that on the agenda, we know, all right, let's get in touch with the office of Lucy McBath. And just about the other element that you were talking about, with how touchable some of these representatives are. Congress does not work in Washington, D.C. the entire year. They have offices in their district. You can actually go visit them. Like John Lewis's office was in the Equitable building downtown Atlanta, and you could just go up there and you can ask for an appointment. It might be, months down the line, but you can actually go in there and talk to his secretary, so whoever is in that position, whoever is going to fill his seat, we can do the same thing for them. We can do the same thing with, Lucy McBath. We can do the same thing with all of these people because they have to have an office in their district because they're not just Washington workers. They represent the area that voted them in. Exactly. That's one of the most powerful things about especially the House of Representatives, because it's split up into like localized districts. The Senate, you only get 2 per state. So they may be a little more, unreachable, but especially for those who live in who don't live in the capital city, because maybe the senators, maybe they do a lot of work even when they are at home in the capital city of their state, and then they're in DC, but it still doesn't mean that it's impossible. They're still touchable as well. So we just have to know what's in play. What is our power? What is in our actual access to do? But I just wanted to make sure that we celebrate these victories. We have to take time to celebrate. We have to take time to look at the positive, because if all we do is continuously focus on what's not happening right, then that it caters you toward depression and then toward apathy. And then you get those phrases like, oh, it's always been like this. It's always going to be like this. There's no real reason for me to do anything. That's what happens when you don't celebrate victories that you do win. So we have to take them, we have to celebrate. It's just like when a sports team wins a championship, or you win a series on the way to the championship. You can celebrate winning the first round series. You can celebrate winning the first round playoff game. Now, don't over celebrate and then not be ready for the next round, but you can at least be happy that you won the game. And then, you take a day or two to celebrate, and then you go back to practice.
Yeah. And think about how that's helping to encourage and motivate the team that you have. Your team is, people need to I'm not saying do it for them, like congratulate them, you know what I mean, like just for being there. I'm saying that for yourself, like even thinking like, okay, this is looking, up, okay, we can take another step from here. All right. It's lighting your path. Because a lot of times, like you said, you can fall into this like hopelessness. You feel like, well, it is what it is. It's going to be how it's going to be. And I just always think, like, even as frustrated as I get sometimes and how hurt I am by a lot of these situations, I feel just so grateful for the people who came before us, who they knew that they were putting themselves in direct danger. You know what I mean? And they didn't even see what was possible on the other side, and they still kept going. So I feel like, who would I be to just, lay it all down and be like, oh, well, there's no point. Because it's not just, we're not only fighting for us and our personal comfort. We got to think about where we want the next generations to be. I surely don't want the next generation to feel the same frustration that I feel now. Who am I to sit there and not do anything? Because it's like, oh, well, it's always this how it is. How it is in 2020 is not how it was in 1700. Exactly. It's not how it was in you know what I mean? Like before the end of enslavement, or during, even right after, several years after, even it's not the same as 40, 50, 60 years ago. So yes, there is a lot of change. And I think it is very ungrateful, and we need to check ourselves when it comes to that too, because it does seem very ungrateful for those other steps that were made before we even got to this point. We just always have to think about steps forward.
Yep. And that's so important to say, make sure that we keep in context. Like, there have been advancements, and we're going to keep saying this. We said it yesterday. They're incremental. But what we're doing right now could not have been done freely in 1950.
Exactly.
to say that we're under the exact same stress is just not true.
At all.
You know what I mean? Like it's just inaccurate. And sometimes we have to put these things into their proper perspective. So, I hope you guys please go out and congratulate Lucy McBath on whatever social media you have. I'm gonna post it a lot today. It's gonna flood my timeline today because it's just an encouraging story. And we need to be encouraged a lot, especially as Black people, and just celebrate each other. It's like, I don't think we do that enough. I don't think we do enough celebrating of the positives as much as we focus on what may be going wrong. And again, not to ignore it, like, we're not ignoring the issues, but we're solution oriented. This is a playbook. We're talking about, okay, what's the next play? All right, we fumble. All right, how do we make sure that we don't fumble again? All right, we threw an interception. How do we make sure that we score on the next drive? How do we stop them when we're on defense? You know what I mean? We got to get right back, snap right back into it. But also, nothing wrong with getting a sack and doing a little dance. You know what I mean?
Right. Because every run, every play is not a touchdown. So you gotta understand, and even doing some things, making some moves. Like I was talking to someone, and kind of relating a situation of like of voting to this was like, even when you play chess or a lot of other games too, a strategic move is also to lose a pawn or two, right? You can't keep all your men on the board. You can't, you won't be untouchable, playing every game. So just, I think, I don't know, we can make it a little more simplistic, just thinking, just understanding how the system works, for us to stay encouraged and to understand that there are still moves to be made and very tangible things that we can be doing to help us get along even further.
So I want to talk about something that, we spoke about the Black agenda yesterday, right? And with the Black agenda, we spoke about elements of police brutality and how to end it and what that looks like. So this week's episode is about We Won and What Now. And we were off the air during the time that this incident happened, the Walter Wallace Jr. incident. But I wanted to talk about it now because now that, a lot of the elections have been settled and a lot of them are still up in the air, we can start moving toward building out what that Black agenda is. Like we said yesterday, and I want to talk about it in depth on Friday about Ice Cube's contract with Black America. But there are a lot of contracts out there like that. Contract with Black America. There are a lot of people putting together agendas. Like you spoke about the young lady who's the co-founder of Black Lives Matter and what she has, what she's putting together. So we have to support all of that. But I wanted to talk about this Walter Wallace Jr. case because it supports beyond a lot of the other cases of police brutality of what we mean and why it's necessary to defund the police or reallocate the funds from the police to other things. And it can even be still allocated toward the police department, but not for police officers. So as an example, so Walter Wallace Jr., for those who don't know, he was killed in October in Philadelphia. He was a man who suffered with mental illness, and the police knew him, his family. They would call all the time when he had breaks. And this time, the police had actually been out to the home. I believe it was like twice that same day, with nothing really happening. And the third time the family called 911, they actually weren't even calling the police. They were calling an ambulance. They wanted medical help. Their son had a knife. He had a mental break, and they wanted to protect him. And you can please, like, I refuse to watch these videos, but I heard that the video, the mother is, when the police show up, she's screaming, "Please don't kill my son." Even though, you know, her son had a knife, and the son was walking toward the police with the knife, and they just shot him. They didn't have tasers. They didn't have anything that could just debilitate him for a moment. I don't even understand why the police don't have like tranquilizer guns. You can still have a gun, and you can still de-escalate the situation, take yourself out of danger, and just trank somebody.
Right.
Like, it's so simple. You don't have to use murder, right? It's just
and it's
ridiculous.
The first resort. It's like their first resort. They don't even try to. It's not like, you know, all other options were exhausted. Like, they go straight to that, and that's what really makes us feel, you know, like it's intentional. This is intentional. It's an opportunity for them because they have that, you know, immunity and all that stuff, you know, to where they know that they won't get in trouble for taking a life. And it's like to think though that taking a life, like that's the first option, is to just murder somebody.
Right.
Like, you're not trying to shoot them in the leg, in the arm, in the shoulder. It's like they're shooting, they're really shooting to kill.
They're trained to shoot center mass. They're not even trained to shoot at ligaments or, you know, extensions of the body. So, but the point is, imagine this. Imagine that when you get a call, the police show up about a mental patient or somebody having a break, and they show up with 2 officers and a social worker. What do they do when somebody is in a hostage situation? Do they just send out the police, or do they train somebody who works for the police department to be a negotiator? They have a negotiator. So this logic base already exists within the police system. So why not have a social worker be in the same position as a negotiator would in the situation of a hostage? Because you don't want to overly aggressively go toward, you know, the captors, because then you lose the hostages. So let's take that same logic into the case of when we're dealing with the mentally ill, right? Don't criminalize mental illness. So you bring a social worker, so you know that, okay, the mentally ill person may be violent. So you send backup with armed police, but they are there only if things get all the way out of hand. The social worker is there to try to talk the person down, and they will use their degree and their skills and experience to help counsel this person from doing whatever it is that they're doing. Like, that's what reallocating funds, that's what defunding the police is about. Everything is not criminal. Everything is not a criminal act, right? And it doesn't mean that the department shouldn't be involved at all. It just means they may not need to be the lead decision makers. They may not need to be the authority in the situation.
Because when you think about it, they're not trained. They're not like all around professionals. And like you just said, how they're even trained, you know, like with the weapons, they're not even trained to de-escalate. They're trained to take them out. And that's something we really got to think about, you know. And like you said, these systems already exist. These solutions already exist, but they're not applying when it comes to us. Even a lot of the, you know, a lot of the laws and stuff, I'm taken back already to even the stand your ground law we were just talking about, you know, was Jordan Davis was a victim of, and it didn't apply to Marissa Alexander. Remember, who shot the warning shots at her own home because someone said that they were going to kill her, and she shot warning shots and was still convicted under that same this same law, right? And it didn't apply to her. So like it definitely is intentional. And so we have to just really be serious about that. And like, you know, just also taking it back to even, you know, Lucy in the Congress now and what she's pushing for, because these people who are pushing for these harmful laws that negatively affect us is people like, you know, the Koch brothers and the NRA. And you know, we already know like a lot of the other talking points and stuff that we hear from these people, it is anti-us a lot of times. And so we just have to be aware and support these people, like really not just congratulate and, you know what I mean, and post about them and talk highly of them. When they call on us to show up in numbers, like, hey, we need signatures on this. Hey, we need you to come and vote on this. We have to make sure that supporting looks like that too, like that we are actually showing up and being effective. You know,
Exactly.
because I mean, it makes no sense. It makes me so upset because we know that they're not trained to de-escalate. Like the training time is not even enough to even cover everything, you know, to be prepared. Like, I don't know, it's so frustrating, man. It's so frustrating. But we have to do something about it. Hold these people accountable.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we are about. We're about doing something. And we talk about this Black agenda again, and we talked about yesterday with trying to bring in the African diaspora into issues of Black Americans to make sure that we're not isolating ourselves, we're not abandoning one another. So while we're talking about police brutality here, there are situations that are happening on the continent, like the SARS. So SARS is a police unit, a specialized police unit. And you know what SARS reminds me of? It reminds me of that crime bill. So the crime bill, so SARS stands for Special Anti-Robbery Squad. When SARS was first enacted in Nigeria, I believe I read it was 1984, and that it was created because there was an outcry from the citizens that there were so many robberies. There was like a lot of violent robberies happening around that time. So the police responded in kind with a new unit. In turn, over time, that unit eventually started to be more like a gang itself against the community. And the community still suffered from violence, but not at the hands of
the people.
criminals, at the hands of the people who were supposed to be protecting them. And the same way that the crime bill was an outcry from the community to stop violence, and then it ended up being a very destructive move against the community itself. You know, SARS became that same type of vile organization or just vile solution. So I want to make sure that while we in the Black American community are fighting against police brutality, we set our sights on supporting our brothers and sisters in Nigeria and looking out for any other situations that are happening like this around the African diaspora. Because while they are fighting against this and we're fighting against what we're fighting against here, together, our fight against the same issue becomes stronger.
Right.
We can relate to one another. We can converse. We can share strategies. We can share solutions on how to deal in these situations. How do we change policy? Okay, this is how the Nigerian political structure is functions. So, okay, what can we in Black America? What can we in Black Haiti? What can we in Black Peru do to offer our support? You know, our remote support to help aid in your, when they see that, oh man, Black Americans are against what we're doing, the way we're policing, and we have funds and we have some type of political voice to highlight it. You know what? When it became on my radar, when Black American celebrities started posting about it, the hashtag end SARS. It's necessary for us to take up this fight. Like we said yesterday, it's the same play, it's the apartheid play. We have to know what's going on with one another. We can
Right.
help. We are so much
And put
stronger
pressure.
together. And when
Right.
they feel encouraged that we are standing behind them, they will fight even harder. The same way we felt encouraged when we saw people in other countries protesting for George Floyd. We have to return the favor.
Mm-hmm. And using the same tools, like you said, we like across the globe, we all have, all these social media platforms, and it's so easy to spread the word. It's so easy to see what's going on in real time. And I mean, just looking at that, I actually have a lot of Nigerian friends, and that's how I found out about it so quickly. And just seeing also like the call to action, that a lot of these organizations and people are they're calling for how to support, because I know I personally like DM'd a couple friends like, well, what are things that we can actually do, other than just sharing a hashtag or making a post about it. I was asking like, what are things to do? And you can donate, you can just help put the pressure on people in different ways. But yeah, that's the one free and not so inconvenient thing to do, is to just be aware of it yourself and then make other people aware, because we can. Social media, what it allows us to do is make the world aware, and more awareness makes those people, what I mean, be held up to a higher standard. They feel embarrassed, they feel humiliated, and they are encouraged to do something about it when the world is watching them.
Yep.
That's the same thing, what we talk about all the time. Malcolm X went up there, to the UN and stuff, and like,
Exactly.
you
Martin Luther
gotta,
King, the nonviolent movement would not have worked if it weren't for the media filming these
right,
things and
exactly.
embarrassing America on the global level,
Hmm.
because America wants to be in the position of policing the rest of the world. But if they have their own dirt that's being uncovered, then they have to make sure that they correct those things if they want to keep that same position. So it's all about perspective. It's all about finding your angles. But this is, like we say, this is the African Social Activism Playbook. This is African Unity Initiative. We're
Hmm.
talking about full time making sure that we are in this thing together. We're not isolated from one another. We are supporting one another. We know what's happening with one another. That way, we can encourage us all to continue to battle against that beautiful burden, to battle
Yeah,
within it. It's
yeah,
easier to carry when it's more people carrying it and everybody is handling their load.
yeah.
So, I mean,
And we're not so, our situations are not so different. And like, I watched a few like round table discussion, or like Zoom calls and different
mhm,
conferences, virtual conferences and stuff that people had about NSARS, and I gained a lot of information from that, and um, it was important. I heard some people making statements. Of course, the corruption of the police force and the government and all that stuff came up, but it's important for us to not write them off like Nigerians or the Nigerian government and everybody as just corrupt. There are underlying issues that what I mean, that lead up to situations like this. And I just quickly pointing out just one thing, like what's going on there with this special unit. These people are basically, they're taking advantage of their position, but you got to understand what's encouraging this, because there have been several attempts um, to disband this whole this unit because of the
mhm,
complaints from the community. It's been so many different extreme situations, like from theft to robbery to murder to rape, all of this stuff, right, by these people in this special squad. You
right.
got to think about, like, for one, they're like, look at who they're targeting. They're targeting people who, like, have things like the fancy cell phones and cars and, you know, that dress a certain way, because I was looking up their salaries of the police officers, because it's always something to motivate, like some horrible actions or, you know, whatever action. They're making like $130 US a month, like, and because I heard some of the officers, like, it was like hidden cameras. Some people were secretly recording, like, when the officers would pull them over and robbing them and stuff like that. And they like asking them, like, how you get this cell phone? How'd you pay for this? How much does this phone cost? How much does this laptop cost? And I hear them talking about how, you know, like, I've been working this job for 20 years, 30 years, and I can't even afford this phone. You know, I can't even feed my family. And it's like, that stuff, these are real issues that people are like, they are human beings also with these real issues. And so this movement is also going to lead to um other problems that need to be fixed, you know, within their government. Within, you know, is not so hard to see how we can relate to it, and with our government and our, you know, our local government. Look at how New York City budget, look at how they're budgeting, and look at how much, you know, like, certain areas are getting the salaries of different people, different professions. And so that's how you see a lot of corruption. What movie was that? Was that Training Day or
Training Day.
it was, yeah, it might have been Training Day, or no, it was another one though. But it was basically where the cops, they were dirty, and but they were talking about like their complaints, and why, not really complaint, but the excuse for their dirty activities was the fact that they were barely getting paid. Like, they had medical bills and school fees, all kind of stuff, and they weren't getting paid properly for their jobs, right? And like, so this is not so hard to relate to, just to understand what's going on. Of course, the behavior, you know, is not acceptable at all. You know, people have to be held accountable.
Seen the movie,
what movie?
You seen the movie Harlem Nights with Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor, right? And Red Fox. And remember, the detective was in Richard Pryor's house, and
right.
He was just talking about how, you know, he had this same suit for like, I don't know, like 10 years, and he's looking around Richard Pryor's house like, look at all this that you have, and I can barely afford a suit on my police salary. And so it was just, those types of things are always in the, you know, that's what causes corruption. Police looking at, oh, look at these criminals, they living better than me, and I'm living, you know, I have a real job, and so crime must actually pay. And so you get all of this corruption that ends up happening on, no matter where you go, no matter what country you're in, doesn't matter. That same idea is what drives people to criminality in the first place.
Exactly.
Even when we're not talking about, you know, corrupt cops, just people, period. Like, okay, I don't have, so I'm going to take the opportunities are
no matter what route. Right.
So there are deeper seated issues, and like you said, we don't want this to be a black mark on Nigeria as a whole. It's something that we have to do to support, and we can't allow them to create a narrative that we don't know how to govern ourselves. That's why the problem is there. Right?
Exactly.
We have to take control of the narrative. We have to support those on the ground who want to end the corruption. But then we have to show and prove, you know, like we said yesterday, transatlantic slave activity impacted Africa just as much as it impacted those of us who were actually taken. Those who were left behind had a void as well. So that's why African Unity Initiative exists, to bridge that gap, to make us whole again, to bring us together, to inspire one another, to support one another. And I think that's just where we'll leave it off today. Mish, let the people know where they can find you and how to support you.
I have a website, mishmashworld.com, where I sell a lot of my handmade items, and my Instagram is mishmash world, mishmash_world. Thank you for the support, brother.
And as always, if you want to get in touch with African Unity Initiative, we are on all social media platforms at African Unity, and you can get more involved on our website, www.africanunity.us, to participate by volunteering, getting involved, financially by becoming a member at $30 a month. One-time donations are welcome, quarterly donations, whatever it is to support the work that we are currently doing, and so much more that we want to do. We appreciate you guys for watching, and we're gonna be here tomorrow talking about what now. We won. What now? What can we
Where do we go from
actively do
here?
to make sure that we leverage our vote and use our constituency?
Where to throw the brick?
Love you guys.
Peace.